Okay. All right, I'm ready. Oh, shoot. Sorry, dude. 1 second. I just accidentally deleted the wrong part of my intro and I gotta copy it again. Sorry about that, man.
Take your time.
Okay. All right. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. The Beyond UX Design shop is open. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some of my favorite UX and software-related quotes, or pick up some digital downloads and print them yourself. Pick up your copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop and get your print on. This week's episode is brought to you by Wix Studio. If you're thinking about redoing your portfolio or kicking off a new website project, listen up. I only have 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things that you can do from start to finish in 30 seconds or less on Studio. You can adapt your designs for every device with responsive AI. You can jump seamlessly between front-end and back-end, speed up projects with an AI code assistant. You can start a design library, and you can reuse full-stack apps and UI components across multiple sites. So time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. This week's episode is sponsored by Jeff White's UX Storytelling Toolkit. Jeff's toolkit offers actionable insights on storytelling for UX designers. Jeff walks you through how to present work to clients and stakeholders, how to craft compelling case studies, and how to improve portfolio presentations for job interviews. Jeff's approach goes beyond your basic once-upon-a-time kind of stuff. And because I know this course will help you out so much, I partnered with Jeff to give everybody listening a 10% discount if you use the code BeyondUX when you check out. So head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/storytelling. Use the code BeyondUX to get 10% off Jeff's course. So learn some incredible techniques to influence your team and advance your UX career. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Rodney, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, and Marty for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, even episodes before they're released. And you get instant access right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So the word designer, I feel like, and my guest today feels like, because he's seen it too, we tend to be married to this title of designer. But are product managers married to titles of product managers? Are engineers married to the title of engineer? Or are they just seeing this as a stepping stone to their later career path? I feel like sometimes, and Ricardo feels the same way, that designers tend to maybe, we'll see, we'll talk about it today, limit themselves by being laser focused and married to this title of design. So I'm really excited to have Ricardo Brito on the show today. Ricardo is a career and life coach with a unique approach, helping people pave their way to personal and professional fulfilling balance through what he calls the PATH method. And Ricardo's journey began back in 2021 when, deeply entrenched in the corporate tech world as a UX design lead, he found himself battling burnout, disillusionment, and defeat. And after seeking medical help, Ricardo embarked on a path of self-discovery through therapy and coaching. And this led him to find a renewed sense of purpose, prompting him to step back from his corporate role. And this decision brought him a profound revelation that his self-worth was not tied to his title or status, but rather in the impact that he made and the quality of his work. And more than products or businesses, it was always about the people and their growth. And through his own journey, Ricardo developed a unique approach to help others navigate professional transitions and transformations, culminating in the creation of the PATH method. So Ricardo, it sounds like you've got a blueprint for what others can do if and when, maybe when is maybe more likely, they tend to get burnt out in the tech world, and being married to that design title limits us quite a bit. So Ricardo, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I'm so excited to have you on. How's it going?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Jeremy. It's really a pleasure to be in your show today and to talk about how designers might be shooting themselves in the foot by being too attached to the title, like I was.
Exactly. I feel you, man. It took me a layoff, I think, actually multiple layoffs to come to the same conclusion. So I'm really excited to have you on today. So I read your bio a little bit. You've got an interesting story. I'm curious, how did you come to this realization that designer as a title wasn't something that may have served you for the next step in your career path?
Oof, that's a big one. It's a big question. I think I was already a bit disappointed with how the industry was heading towards, and in my last job reality, I was not really happy, and I burned out. Right, I really burned out, and for 8 months, had no idea what to do, and I realized that I could never see myself outside of design because that's everything I had been through since starting, with Corel Draw at the age of 15. So that attachment to design, that attachment to who I was and where my value was coming from was really blocked me to understand what else can I do? What else can I go? And that was a real painful realization. I think with time, it took me quite some time to realize that tends to be a specific thing of designers to not get away from their titles, especially with the work I do now. The more I work with people, and I work with people from the creative fields and from the tech fields, designers tend to always be the ones that are more, attached to that title.
Exactly. I've seen the same thing too, and it's interesting. You had to go through this sort of trials and tribulations to sort of figure it out. And hopefully we could talk about some of this today so that people don't have to go through all of this and they can maybe sidestep this and jump the line, I guess. But I'm curious, when you think of, you've done a lot of coaching, and do you do coaching just for designers, or do you do coaching for just tech professionals in general, regardless of their role?
Yeah, tech professionals and creatives, regardless of their role. But there is a lot of designers, of course.
Yeah. So I assume then you've come to this realization by talking to people, non-designers, and comparing and contrasting. And I'm kind of curious if you could sort of talk me through what you've seen when it comes to maybe product managers, for instance, and how they view titles versus how designers view titles.
When I'm in this process of supporting people to figure out what's next, a lot of that it's about painting scenarios and making a lot of experiments to understand where are your strengths, what you like to do, and so on. And sometimes you get to, oh, this sounds like that kind of job, like, I don't know, program manager, for example. Or this sounds, customer success, for example. And product managers tend to be, oh, yeah, that's exciting. That I can totally see where we are heading here. And designers, there's always this moment of, I don't know. It's just, can I really do the design work I need to do? Or I can do, it's just, no, you can't. I mean, you're going to do exactly more or less the same that you're going to do, and even better because people in that area don't have the skills and the broad perspective as you as a designer have, but they tend to be a little bit more, I doesn't have design in the title. Like what? I'm going to be like now a customer success agent, or am I going to be a program manager? While product managers are, I can totally see that and see the transition and see the potential and not caring at all about the title.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I actually mentioned this in my book, but I think this is something a lot of us tend to overlook, especially new designers, especially people who just are starting out in their career, is the term itself is very naive and there's a lot of hubris in it, right? I am the UX designer. I am designing the user's experience, as if you control every aspect of the thing that will impact the user's experience, right? And there's so much hubris there, and there's so much this grandiose, I don't even know the right term, but we have this grandiose view of ourselves as if we control how the user views the product. And certainly we can control aspects of it, the interface, the flows perhaps that have turned into interfaces, but there is so much beyond what we do that impacts the user experience, right? And I feel like us designers, we have this sort of grandiose view of our role. And not to knock designers by any means. I mean, I'm a UX designer, obviously, but I think there's something there. There's like this psychological thing that like we feel we are so important and integral. But I feel like a lot of other people view themselves as just sort of like, well, I'm just managing a thing and or I'm just doing a thing or whatever it is. I don't know if you've seen something similar to that. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that maybe is there some correlation there between how we view our work versus this attachment to the designer title?
I love it. You went directly to my pet peeve.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome.
I think there is a lot of hubris in any field in tech, right? In any kind of practice, but especially in design, there is definitely that hubris that you mentioned. And I think that's where things get tricky because we see ourselves. So, and I see ourselves. I'm still attached to the term myself.
I understand. It's hard to get rid of. It's hard to get rid of.
When we see ourselves like that, so important, but there is a cognitive dissonance, which is the rest of the world and the organization doesn't see ourselves like that, right? And then you enter in this thing of like trying to prove yourself and getting frustrated about that they don't see the value. And that's often why designers have also the reputation of being a bit nagging and a bit me, while other departments are not. And I think that's also a bit of a representation how product, for example, as a practice got so much more influencing the organizations in such short amount of time compared to design, because they were more able to adapt. They were more able to, okay, let's figure this out so I can do the thing I actually want and not pushing my own dogma on you and demand respect. And there is much to be discussed about where that comes from compared to designers or not, but totally with you there. I see that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too, because when I think about the roles and responsibilities. I've been doing software since 2011. And when I started out, waterfall was big. We used to have these giant 3-inch thick documents that we would print out. And, it was crazy. We did everything up front before we started writing any code. And we had business analysts, never had a product manager. And this was 2011. Obviously, I'm sure there were product managers back in 2011. But as I think about it, it's interesting you even bring this up because these product managers are relatively newer-ish than designers who have been around since, graphic designers, design in general has been around for a very long time. Product management is a very new thing. And I don't know, I just thought of this. I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. And I don't know, maybe that plays into it too, because it is such a new role. It isn't something that people tend to be attached to like a designer is, which is sort of maybe, we see ourselves as artists and more, altruistic maybe is the right term, It's just kind of interesting to think about. Anyway, I'm sure we could talk about this for an entire episode just on the philosophy behind all this, but we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So I want to talk a little bit about this marriage, being married to the title designer. From your experience, you dealt with a lot of clients over the years. What have you seen is the negative outcome when people attach themselves to this design title and have a hard time freeing themselves? What are some negative things that you've seen, and how does it negatively impact our career?
First, it limits your career options because your narrow focus is anything that is within this box and a bit to the sides, but it's not very broad, right? So it limits what your future can be. It limits your impact. It limits your career growth. It also limits the way you see yourself and the story you tell yourself. And I think that's the most dangerous one because it goes to the core of our identity. And then it reinforces how the world itself manifests. It also forces to not to defend. So by defending, we create a more defensive position towards justifying who we are as designers, and what's the expression in English? So you stuck your heels in the sand or in the floor, when you get yeah. So I think that's some of the negative problems that come with it.
And obviously, the benefits of the people that you've seen that have embraced it, I guess it would be the opposite. So, I'm just sort of, I don't know. I'm not going to ask you to list the positives because obviously they're all the inverse of the negatives. But it's interesting when I think about this, like I mentioned before, I, for a long time, I was design lead and I had a team and I, had teams in Europe and the United States and all, in California and New Orleans and all over the place, Atlanta. And I was leading a team. And I got that app. I didn't get laid off yet. I was about to get laid off, but that app got defunded and canceled, and I lost that identity. I was just a regular old designer, and for the longest time, for years, I was on this product for 4 years, and for 4 years, I've just felt so important. I felt like I felt like I helped make decisions and all this stuff. And then when that app got defunded, I realized I had absolutely no control over my career at that point. Like nobody asked me. It wasn't even considered. Should we ask Jeremy if this applicant? No, like some executives in a corner office looked at a spreadsheet and said, cut that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And my team, nobody argued against it. it's just interesting because like when I think back, I think of exactly, I was falling for this and I wanted to be the lead designer. I wanted to be this. I wanted to be that. And I passed opportunities up to do other things. I wonder where I would be today, I guess, is what I'm kind of thinking, because I just was so laser focused on that title and the responsibility. And that was me. And then I got laid off and I realized like, that's not me. That's not me at all. Like, that's just my job. Like, that's my paycheck. I get paid to do that stuff, but I'm like all these other things outside of work. And that's when I started embracing the podcast and writing a book and all these other things are starting to post on LinkedIn more and become, thinking about my content and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I don't know. It's just from my personal experience. I'm just reinforcing everything you're saying, I guess, right here. I just sort of turning this into like a coaching therapy session, I guess.
No, but I would love to ask you more because I just want to ask you one question. What was the thing that, or one of the things that helped you made peace with it, with this break of identity?
Yeah, well, realizing that nobody else really cared, I think, right? Like I cared. My wife didn't care. As long as I had a job and was making money, she could care less. I could be waiting tables. I don't think she'd care as long as I made at the same amount I'm making now, I think, But, I think that's it. Like my friends didn't care, especially the people that weren't in tech, like, my electrical engineer friends or my petroleum engineer friends or my plumber friends, like they couldn't care less. And so, it was just sort of one of those things. The other thing I was thinking about, I actually had a buddy from high school who became a master plumber. I mentioned this. And this guy has done like all kinds of stuff, right, in the construction industry. And I was thinking about him, and I'm like, what, this guy, like plumber, which generally, a trade, he's a tradesman, but he joined a union. It's like that guy makes more than I probably do as a plumber. He runs his own business. He's got, all this stuff. He's like very important. He works like these big construction projects for the state, and the city and everything. And I was just kind of thinking about him and like all the various jobs he's had. And it's like, seems like, oh, he's just jumping around from thing to thing. But it's like, he doesn't, I don't think he cares. He doesn't care. Why do I care what my title is? And I think that was like one of the things I was kind of thinking about. But, ultimately it was really like, nobody else cared but me. I don't even think my UX design friends were like, oh, Jeremy's not as important now. He doesn't have that, Nobody said that. I would never think that about somebody else. And so I don't know, it's sort of the spotlight effect. Like everybody thinks that they're the most important thing, or everybody's watching them and looking at them. And really like nobody cares. So that was sort of how I don't know. I kind of came.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing. But that also speaks volumes for how the industry is set up to push you to think about that out of yourself and to reinforce this kind of cult of our self-identity of who we are as designers. Yeah. But anyway, I think that's a lot of bigger discussions.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hop into this idea, and I think we could explore this for a little bit because this was really fascinating for me. You and I talked a couple of weeks back, and you mentioned that like out of all the roles that you have worked with, that designers are probably best suited to hop around and explore these various titles, but we're the ones that are less likely to do it. And I'm curious from your perspective, talk to me about why do you think designers are best suited to hop around and do different things? What is it about designers that make us so unique?
It's a very good question. I will try to make justice to it. But look, how many professionals in the industry know about business till a certain extent, know about the understanding the client or understanding what they're designing for and figuring out the right problems to solve, having the right tools to think about how to solve those problems, actually create the solutions and prototype the solutions and think both strategically on a high level, but also, pardon my French, but also getting shit done. A lot of us comes from the craft. We know how to get stuff done, but we also know how to think holistically about the business, what the business needs, how do we connect the solutions to the business goals. And I'm stressing the business because I'm a solopreneur now. So that's something that's really important to me. And we have these diverse skills that many other professions don't have. They have slices of this, but we as designers, we have this 360 view of what the business needs to run, right? Maybe we are not the best CFOs, but even that can be learned. And I think we are such all-rounders that can think strategically, can get stuff done, can understand problems, can solve problems. Yeah, we are in the right way to be that plumber, like you said, be the person that, maybe starts prototyping a small plumbing business, but knows that now I need a team. And I started to create different find different customers, find different problems to solve, and creating the systems to solve those problems. I think a lot of the designers and a lot of the experience we have contribute for us to be pivot to anywhere we want.
I love it. So let me ask you this. Out of the experience that you've had and the people that you've coached, what are some roles that you think designers are maybe better suited for than maybe other roles? Because, maybe software engineer might not be the best role for us, but maybe product manager is as an example. Are there any roles that you think are better suited for a designer's skill set than maybe others within tech? Let's just keep it within the software tech world.
Well, making friends the hard way, we can become great product managers. Because I think there is a lot in product management. There's a lot of lack of the solution space and of the problem space, and I think designers can become, and that's what I've seen a lot of designers going for. HR is also an interesting role because employee experience. It's a whole journey on itself. It's a whole journey. I think HR are more open to it. I also did HR projects in the past, and it was very fun to do the career paths for the whole company with them and so on, because you really understand that. I think designers are really good to be internal consultants, all-rounders, trying to understand the organization. I don't know how to call that because some people are called innovation managers, some people are called change agents, some people are called service designers. So it's a bit tricky to titles in tech. They don't mean that much. But I think being this internal person that can work vertically and supporting the organization to look at itself and understand when it can get better. Customer support, being part of customer support teams to understand how can you draft the experience of how to get support in this company, for example. There's so many, even in sales, even in sales, you can have a great impact to design the journey and the communication to bring clients in. There is so many roles, and I can see that many designers are more inclined for, you will be a very good internal one. You will be a very good customer-facing one. Yeah, I hope this paints a bit of a picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something that I've seen personally, and you mentioned, this idea of service design, but what I think, and this is unfortunately, I think a lot of companies are not hiring these roles, to be perfectly honest. But there are opportunities in CX and customer experience overall that I think, are beyond UX design. And a lot of times this sits in with, maybe higher level leadership sometimes. At least in my last company, it was sort of like more high level. And unfortunately, there was a huge disconnect between the software we were building and those teams. Those insights never really made their way back and forth. Feedback we were getting was never making up to them, and conversations they were having were never making it down to us. But I think it's interesting. It's like something that and this is maybe something I want to dig into next. If you were in a role like UX designer and you're not necessarily satisfied, but you see a need in your company. I mentioned that a lot of companies aren't necessarily hiring, but how do you coach those who see that problem, maybe internally with their own team, and want to go after that and be that sort of change agent or the advocate for that problem and try to get a team put together, budget, whatever, to get that problem solved? Do you have any advice for those people who are looking to do that maybe internally? Is that something you've ever come across?
Well, that made my career, to be honest, because wherever I was always finding opportunities that were probably not directly the responsibility of designers, but I could jump in. And I mean, unapologetically, I would just jump in and ask if I could do it. And if you give me the opportunity, and let me try to solve the problem and make a case for it, right? And I think that's how you prove internally that we can be involved in this. We can start solving that, right? That's why, for example, in my last company, I supported CX. I supported parts of support. I supported HR. I did a lot of like C-level support where the company was going through a management transition, and nobody asked me. I just saw an opportunity, but I also didn't come as a designer. That's the difference. Although I was a designer, I was just like, there is this problem that needs to be solved. This is how I would go about it. How do you think about this? Oh, that might be interesting. Let's give it a try. I think that's the difference. I'm not the ambassador of design that's going to solve the problems. I just go and solve the problem. And that's how I would advise people to do it. It's like, it's the same thing when we do to companies, right? Remember when companies were like, we need to show that we are agile. So you start with one single project that is agile, goes well, and go back to management. See, it works. Now implement it around the company. It's exactly the same philosophy. Get that one win and prove yourself through that.
And I'm just thinking too about, the differences between like a startup and a giant corporation. And a lot of times people will look at a startup and say, oh, it's nimble. I can move around. I wear a bunch of hats. It's a logical place for me to go and help make change in that startup environment. And I think that is probably accurate. Depends on the company, obviously. But when I think about large corporation, I worked at a giant multinational conglomerate for a long time. And I have to be honest, I saw a lot of opportunities in those giant corporations for the exact same type of thing. They're very structured and they have very specific roles. And so when the problem arises, the interesting thing is they're like the Titanic. It takes a long time to turn, to move, to fix those issues. And if you can bring that up and start advocating for it, and if you know the right people and you do internal networking and you've built up your social capital as that change agent, people know you for that, you actually have a lot of opportunity in those large organizations to make your own job in a way. Maybe it's not going to be a brand new title. You might have the exact same title, the exact same pay. You're just maybe on a new thing that isn't necessarily designed. But those large organizations, there's still a lot of opportunity there. I think the unfortunate thing is a lot of people just see, those giant corporations as very rigid and very structured and, oh, they'll never let me do anything but this very specific role I was hired for. And I don't think that's necessarily true, especially if you do that internal networking, get to know the right people, find the right executives, meet the people, do the stuff you got to do. It's actually often a little bit, I would even say a little bit easier because they often have the money to go and throw at a problem that a tiny little startup does not have, which I don't know if you've had experience with that. That's been my experience at a large organization. Obviously, every company is different. So my experience might not be the same as others, but that is something I've experienced firsthand.
No, you're totally right. I mean, I didn't experience because I never worked for such a large organization. So I assume there is a lot of red tape, but I think the same applies in many other things because it is about the right connections. It is about the corridor talk. It is about who do you know and the right executives, right? So, and I think one of the problems, I was hosting a roundtable in a design conference actually a couple of months ago, and a lot of the things that came out is just don't trust the rules. Don't go by the rules because we try to go officially by the rules and by merit and to get there. It's like, no, you need to get outside. You need to shake some hands. You need to pay some lunches. You need to smoke some cigarettes outside. You need to, get these connections. And we expect that this is given in a silver plate. Look at the great work I do. I discovered this problem and I can solve this. Give me the opportunity. It doesn't work like that. And I think if you do it like you say, right? Yeah, you are hustling a little bit for it. You are working for it and showing your value.
So you mentioned storytelling, and I think this is an interesting time to dig into storytelling a little bit because, we talk about going and finding these other roles. We talk about, making your own job or whatever it is. It's hard to do that. It's hard to convince someone to give you the money. It's hard to convince someone to give you the task without the ability to tell a great story. So could you talk a little bit about this? I know you do you have a course on storytelling. You talk about it on LinkedIn a lot. So tell me a little bit about the value of storytelling here and how that can help us achieve those things that we're trying to do.
So I think I will start with the internal part in tech and also how it goes outside. I think internally, for example, when you're trying to get those projects or you try to make your jobs, you talk to different people. Maybe you talk to your lead, or maybe you talk to the director, or maybe you talk to HR or the budget owner. Each person was going to need a different story with a different plan and a different focus. You need to show the value that your project or your work brings to them, not trying to convince them, show them, brings to them. And this, maybe with the director, you just have 5 minutes in the corridor. Maybe with HR, you have a lunchtime. Maybe with your lead, it's in your one-on-one. So you need to tailor those stories to show the value that you bring for each of them and also the length. And this is going to help you to show the value. Outside of work, it also shows it helps us to make sense of who we are professionally, right? Why somebody that maybe came from the kitchen now became accidentally entering design, how does that story fit? How can you bring the knowledge from kitchen to design, for example? How are you going to justify that transition outside, right? For the person to hire you. And for me, it was the same. I came from design now and I'm completely in a different field. I need to express why is that a value to my clients? So this is all about storytelling. Is firstly to make sense of who we are internally, and then is also knowing how do we communicate our value depending on who are we talking to and in which situation we are.
Yeah, no, you bring up an incredible point there, which is, when we're talking to career shifters who are trying to get into UX design or tech, we always tell them, tell a great story about how your transition or your experience will benefit you in your new role. And it's just the opposite here. If we are leaving design or moving past design into another role, how does that impact our work? And, again, I think this is something as UX designers, we talk about a lot. I follow some product managers, and every once in a while, a product manager will talk about storytelling and stuff like that. But for the most part, as we talked about this before, UX designers tend to be very well positioned to move beyond design. And I think this is another example of how we're doing this quite often. And most of us are very skilled at it. And I think it's just applying it now to move past design. And it's interesting too, because something else I think is worth noting here. And this is something that you asked before about what helped me. And something else I just remembered and realized was, I see design, product management, all these things, building great software is a team sport. And you've got, if you think about it in terms of baseball, for instance, you've got a pitcher, you've got a first baseman, shortstop, outfielder, catcher, whatever, right? You need someone to throw the ball, pitch the ball. You need someone to be at first base. You need someone to catch the ball in outfield, things like that. But those are jobs to be done. If you're going and playing baseball in the park and you don't happen to have the right amount of people, you could still play baseball. You just don't have a second baseman, but you're still playing baseball, right? Or whatever it is. And so something that kind of that, and this, I'm making a connection to what you just said here, but something that I realized was that it's just a job to be done. Someone needs to do these things. Someone needs to do the research. Someone needs to connect the dots. Someone needs to do these things. If I'm a product manager and doing that, so what? If I am somebody else doing that, so what? And our skill set is just, it's something we can take and apply to any role, just like you said. And so how do you define that? How do you explain that? That's the thing. And so, I don't know. Anyway, just sort of thinking out loud here, but that's just something I feel like is a critical thing, like telling that story. So somebody will pay you to do that. Right? That's like the trick, is finding someone to pay you. But, in order to get someone to pay you, you got to, sell them, tell them a story, things like that. So anyway, I love that. I don't know. I'm just sort of.
I love it. But for example, another to add on that, you also need to feel that story is authentic when you tell it, right? That this thing of knowing how to contextualize your skills and putting in a different context, and even maybe call it a different thing and sell it, but from the heart. It starts with you. So storytelling needs to start with your own identity, with how you tell your story to yourself. Because when you tell to a client, when you tell to a stakeholder, to your boss, they're going to feel it if you are telling the story from the heart or not, right? So it's also about this picking up these transferable skills, picking up this experience and put it in a package that we believe in the first place, so we can actually communicate.
Yeah. I love it. So let me ask you this. We talked a lot about this idea of reinventing yourself within tech. But what about reinventing yourself outside of tech? Let's say you're fed up with the layoffs. You've been laid off 5 times in the last 2 years. You just want to get out. You're done. I don't want a job in tech anymore. What's some advice for designers that maybe want to just get out of tech and want to reinvent themselves in some other way? Have you worked with anybody who's done that successfully and, transitioned out? I feel like for me, I would love to do that. The struggle is finding something that's going to pay me what I was making before, because our salaries are maybe overinflated. I don't know. I hate to say that, but what are some things that you found that maybe help a designer transition out of tech?
Well, getting comfortable with the discomfort of getting rid of the golden handcuffs to start. There's no free lunches there. And that was also a hard one for me to deal with. And first of all, we are not talking about where you are going, right? You're still talking about some things to think about. Have a plan. Be strategic about it. Don't wait for the last minute to, like me, like I said, hack this shit and close my laptop and disappear for 8 months. Don't do that. Just try to mitigate this. So for me, it's, if you start to be dissatisfied, start to plan in advance. Start making your exploration. That's why I work with different type of people, right? I work with people who are, I'm dissatisfied. I'm not ready to make an action, but I'm ready to start searching. I'm ready to start exploring. Even that step is already important, because these career changes takes time, takes preparation, takes money. You need to plan for it if you want to be successful, right? So I think a lot of people get to the point of desperation to only take a step, and don't do that. it took me, look, I consciously went back to the company that I burned out. I was about to be promoted and I said, no, I actually want a demotion and I want to work 4 days a week because I'm probably out of here in a year. That was my plan. I need to swallow it. I did some cool stuff at that point, but for me, it was like, this is a transition year. And I think a lot of people, they want a transition right away. And that's not going to happen. That's the first step that you're going to fail. And these things take time. I want my life to be changed. So therefore, I need to make a sacrifice maybe of 1 year, 2 years to make this change sustainable, because in the long run, in the 20 years timeline, this is a small step that was totally worth it. And that's the hardest part that many people don't realize when they are looking for a transition, they are looking for a change. Like, it's going to take time. It's going to take money. It's going to take strategy. And you need to start doing it before you get utterly desperate.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned golden handcuffs. And I think this is it's just such a wonderful vision. It's such a wonderful way to describe it, because it's exactly what it is. It seems at the time, oh, we've making all this money. I got this great job. Look at all the crap I can buy. And then you get lifestyle creep. And then you get bills, and you get a house that's probably bigger than you really need. And then your family gets used to that lifestyle and vacations and going out to eat all the time and all this stuff. And the interesting thing is, when we think about these transitions, we don't make these transitions or think about making these transitions when everything's going well, right? We think about these transitions when something is not going well, when there's layoffs all around, or when, God forbid, you were laid off and you suddenly had the transition made for you. And my personal experience, I've got a wife, 2 kids. My wife works in tech, both made a lot of money. She still makes a lot of money. So we had this lifestyle, it's like giant house, mortgage that was way more than I ever had in my life. I got laid off, and now suddenly, like, shit, what do we do? And for me personally, this is something of advice I give to other people. I'm like the old dad, giving financial advice, but like, watch out for lifestyle creep, because if you do want to make this transition, you may not be making as much, right? Even if you stay in tech, if senior UX designer, staff, whatever, no one's going to hire you as a staff product manager as your first job as a product manager, right? You're probably going to start off in a lower tier, which means you probably won't be making as much money. Now, I do believe career shifters, especially ones that have professional experience, tend to move up a little bit faster because they've got a lot of those soft skills, and they can learn the hard skills rather quickly, and they can progress. And so you might make it up to staff PM faster than someone straight out of school, but it is going to take some time. And if, this is something like I tell people all the time, like layoffs, I have no idea if there are going to be more layoffs or less layoffs in the next 5 or 10 years. But I could tell you right now, I am planning as if they are. I am planning. I am hoping for the best, but I am planning for the worst. And I'm going to build up a runway of at least 3 to 6 months, if not more. And that's such like an interesting thing to think about. And I think a lot of us just don't. We wait until everything is so bad that we can't take it anymore. And then at that point, we can't. And I think that's such an important lesson that I love that you're bringing up. And the imagery of golden handcuffs is just such a perfect imagery for it. I guess maybe I heard him, but like in that terms, I just love it. And I don't know. For me, that's something, because like I got laid, I mentioned this before, I got laid off in December. And I started doing consulting. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I was not ready to go 100% in on working for myself. If I were doing it again, I would plan, and I would prep, and I would lay the foundation and start building clients and all that stuff. I wouldn't wait until I needed it. Whether that's getting laid off and being forced to, or being burnt out and being forced to because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I don't know, that golden handcuff imagery, I think it's so important.
I love that. Also, let me add that there are other things that people can add on top, right? Which is one of the things that I do with clients is, if you were to do your solopreneur business or your freelancing business, what would that look like? Like, what? But I never want to be a freelancer. Yes, but I work with people that don't get a job for a year and a half. And at this point, they could have built something. So if you think about what you can do next, if you can think about a small business model that you can do on yourself as a solopreneur or freelancer, or however you identify, you have, you know your clients, you know your service, I'm going to position yourself. You have some sort of a sales strategy. Yeah, okay, don't do it. Don't use it, but have it in the drawer. Because the moment that you want to that you needed, you open the drawer and you hit the ground running. A lot of people get to the point again, oh, maybe I should become a freelancer because I'm running out of money and employment benefit is going like, yeah, but now you need 3 months to think about all of that. So I would add to the preparation of everything you said, I would add maybe have a small business plan on the side. And the second one is you can start consciously building a network of clients while you are employed. Start reaching out to people, getting to know them, on LinkedIn or go to meetups. So what saved my business when I moved to Solopreneur is all the network I created while I was a designer. And I'm a coach. I have nothing to do with design, but I had an audience that, maybe 20% of them left me because, well, he's not a designer anymore, which is fine. But the remaining 80% was my starting base. So this is things that you can do consciously on the side without too much hustle that brings these securities.
Yeah, something else too, this is something that I kind of thought about a lot after I got laid off is being tied, again, this goes back to the original idea, being tied to that designer title and being ashamed to take a job that wasn't design because I had to, And so looking back on when I got laid off, I've got the podcast that makes me like a few $1,000s a year in sponsorships, which is peanuts. And basically all that money goes to paying for crap like Riverside and subscriptions for all the stupid stuff I have to pay subscriptions for just to run the stupid podcast. So very little money coming in. I'm like, I could get a job bartending again. I could get a job waiting tables. And, it's not glamorous. It's not what I want to do, but, I could get a job in a kitchen probably. I probably wouldn't be making even close to what I was making before, but it's something, And I feel like going back, that was like very hard for me to get to that point where but it's not a software job. It's not a job tech. It's like, is that beneath me? Am I like a failure? Because, all that stuff. And that is I don't know, hard to wrap my head around because I got a wife and 2 kids, like I said, I had to make some damn money, if the consulting thing didn't work out, what am I going to do? And, I don't know, it's just, it's tough, man, being in that position. And I think I don't know, embracing that idea that I'm not a designer type, that's not me. I do design, but I can also do anything else, and I don't know. It's just such an important thing. All right. So Ricardo, we talked for a little bit now. Anything else to add that we didn't get a chance to cover today that you think is critical for designers or anybody else in tech thinking about making a transition, but maybe afraid to do it because they're tied to that title?
Give yourself permission to explore. I would just say that I think that was also the hardest thing for me is just give yourself permission to explore and experiment as much as you can with anything that, makes your heart sing in a way. Because at the end of the day, we want to feel good about what we do. We want to feel connected to what we do. So follow that instinct. Just try it out. That's the first step.
Right on. I love it. Yeah. A couple of weeks back or a couple of months, I can't remember when it was, I had Allison Gretz on the show and she's a career coach. And we talked all about this idea of treating your job like a playground, right? Or your career rather, like a playground. We often think about a career as a ladder, right? I have 10 ladders to choose from. I choose that one ladder and I'm going to climb that ladder all the way to the top. And I'm going to go from this to as high as I can possibly go. And I'm never going to go to another ladder. But, you think about as a playground, you try this thing, you try that thing, you explore. And I love the analogy too, because it's like little kids having fun. It's like, have fun with your career, enjoy your career and enjoy yourself, find your passion and let that lead you wherever it goes. And hopefully you make enough money to support yourself and your family along the way. But, anyway, I just love that idea and that analogy of treating your career like a playground. I think it fits exactly into what we're talking about today. You do not have to stay in that one ladder. If you want to hop off the ladder, you might go down a few rungs. You might not make as much money, but enjoy the journey.
Love it.
Easier said than done, obviously. It all depends on how much trust you got. But all right, cool. So Ricardo, before we get out of here, I got some questions that I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. Are you ready?
As ready as I can be.
All right. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
My favorite non-design book? Well, recently I just read Slow Productivity from Cal Newport, and it really, truly rocked my world about how I approach productivity, especially as a solopreneur. I don't have favorites for life because my ADD is just, oh, I love this, oh, I love that. So for now, that's the one.
I love it. That's all right. Well, it's as of now, your favorite as of today. Next week, a few months later, we'll have you back on. It'll change. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
Diary of the CEO is something that I tend to listen. And a small show that runs for 20 years in the in the national radio of Portugal that invites all kinds of guests. That will be my two top ones, I guess.
I assume that one's in Portuguese.
It's in Portuguese. Yeah.
We need those universal translators. All right. Next up, what is your favorite meal? This could be something you cook, your grandma used to cook, something you've had at a restaurant, favorite meal.
If I have to choose something that I will constantly go, I would say cod fish in the oven with a lot of olive oil and roasted potatoes and some veggies and olives.
I assume that's a Portuguese dish.
It's very as Portuguese as it comes.
And you're in Germany right now, though. You don't live in Portugal, right?
No. I live in Berlin for the last 12 years, but yeah, I'm from Portugal. Yeah.
Yeah. So very different cuisines, Portuguese and German. Very, very different. All right. What is your favorite vacation spot? As y'all in Europe, y'all can pretty much go anywhere you want.
I like to travel, so I don't travel often to the same place, but I love Bangkok.
Oh, fun. Awesome. Yeah, a friend of mine, Ruby, prior just moved to Bangkok from Singapore, and she's really excited about that. And I don't know. I when I was a kid, still not just when I was a kid, I would love to go to Bangkok and travel and go to some of the beaches in Thailand and stuff, but that's on my list. I made the, I won't say mistake. I made the life choice, I'll say that, of having kids before I did all that other stuff. So that means all that other stuff will have to wait until they're old enough to, hang out by themselves at the house. Cause I definitely don't want to take them with me on those trips. I want some peace. I want some damn peace and quiet. All right. Maybe I'll take them. I go twice, one without them, once with them. All right. Last question. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
I love Google Slides.
Google Slides. All right. What is it about Google Slides?
I don't know. It's just on the browser. It's easy to use. I do a lot of presentation. I do a lot of thinking as well. But I use a lot of Miro. I like Miro, but it's becoming more and more complex. And I work a lot with Procreate, actually, because I do a lot of illustrations. So I do a lot of Procreate with a pencil and all of that. So I really, really enjoy that.
That's really cool. Yeah, I cannot draw to save my life. So that is something I wish to go back. If I could go back in time, I would encourage young Jeremy to take some art lessons and draw and stuff. So, I'm a designer, but I'd never taken a design class in my life. So I didn't go to school for design. I didn't do it in high school, college. I didn't do graphic design or any of that stuff. Totally self-taught. But I feel like that's my thing. I wish I could go back in time. I see some people sketching stuff and drawing. It's just so cool.
It's just training, man. Everybody can get there at any point, I believe in that.
I know. It's just a matter. Thanks. I appreciate it. It's just a matter of starting over. That's going the whole theme of the show, I guess. Starting over, it's such a mental hurdle that I don't know. I'm just so old. Teaching a new dog new tricks at this point is very hard. All right, Ricardo. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. I learned a lot. I love talking about this. Like we said from the very beginning, designers, we got this hubris that we think we had just this grandiose view of our jobs, but I think we need to not take ourselves so seriously. And I think when we can do that, we can step back and we can analyze critically our jobs and our career and maybe go off on a different path altogether and not feel so bad about it. So before we get out of here, Ricardo, tell everybody where they can find you. Give yourself a plug. I know you do courses throughout the year. You post on LinkedIn a lot. Tell everybody where they can find you. Give yourself a plug.
So I'm mostly present on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I run a bi-weekly newsletter that's called Burning Thoughts, where I talk about all of these topics. I run a career storytelling course every now and then, do a lot of one-on-one coaching. And I also have the Career Storytelling Toolkit, which is for free and you can download from my website and from my profile on LinkedIn. I'll probably give you the link to put on the description. And that's where people can find me. And Jeremy, it was really, really a pleasure to be here today. I really enjoyed my conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. What was one time, real quick, what was the URL for?
So it's ricardobrito.me/gift. Then you get the toolkit and the webinar all for free.
Sounds good. And we will include all that stuff in the show notes. So check out beyonduxdesign.com and find it all there. Ricardo, thank you again. This was a great conversation, and I hope we changed some lives today. I feel like we did. I feel like we inspired a few folks to think beyond the title. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Ricardo and me for today. I hope we helped to get you to think a little bit more about your title and whether or not being tied to that title is holding you back in your career. Now, listen, I want to be very clear. Ricardo and I are not saying UX design and the concepts behind human-centered design, customer thinking, all those things are not valuable. You can use those human-centered design principles no matter what role you have, and you can take that with you, and that makes you even more valuable. But you don't always have to be stuck with the title of UX designer. But I'm curious, have you run into this before in your career? Have you embraced a new title? Or maybe you haven't. I don't know. Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you can imagine. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then for the love of God, tell them about it. Don't forget to check out the Beyond UX Design shop. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful UX theme art prints and digital downloads you can print yourself. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free. And you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're released. You can get instant access right now to the video archives for as little as $5 a month. If you've been sitting on building your new website, Wix Studio can help get you there faster. Wix Studio is a powerful platform that lets you create and manage websites easily. With Wix Studio, you can quickly adapt designs for every device, reuse assets, and my favorite, export from Figma, and much more. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. Do yourself a favor and head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/storytelling and use the promo code BeyondUX at checkout to get 10% off Jeff's storytelling course. Learn some super valuable ways to influence your team and advance your UX career. Remember to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm getting old.